Hi everyone, I'm Bill Matthew D, and today I will be talking about how the fashion industry influenced by social media. So let's get started. So for this topic of mine, here are the listed of objectives that I wanted to talk about. So first, I wanted to talk about the social media because I think it's really important to learn this now that we are all familiar with. But then again, I'm actually gonna go in depth on this tool, especially that social media has a shopping tool right now. And I think it's important to talk about this because we are always in our phones, and I think shopping tool is one that we cannot just live anymore. So yeah. And the next one will be the comparison between the online and offline shopping experience, because I believe that even though we actually have the shopping tool as an option for us, uh, some people still prefer the traditional way of shopping, which is offline or going to the stores. Uh, Also, after this comparison, I want to talk about the Sears versus Amazon because there's an alleged issue right now that Sears has been closing its stores because of its downfall, and of course the Amazon being the biggest retail store right now, and the Farfetch, which is a luxury retail experience. We're gonna go deep through that. Of course, the fast fashion and the sustainable fashion, because I think it's important that we are aware what we are wearing from our closet. And of course, the job that made in social media and the fashion industry, because I believe that fashion is one of the biggest assets in our generation right now. Not just in our generation, but uh, in even before. This is actually big asset. So, and the conclusion, of course. So let's get started. So social media, just like I said, it's part of our everyday lives now, and it's crazy because, uh, especially for young adults like me, we would always wake up and go through our phones already, and we actually forgot how to prioritize things first when we wake up, and we're already on our phone, and it's crazy. But I wanted to talk about the history that social media started in early 2000s, specifically in 2004, and it's actually this MySpace. I personally didn't experience using this MySpace because back in the Philippines, we actually have a different version of the MySpace called Friendster. But it's kind of like the same thing. You would interact with your friends, and you would actually see the daily activity of how people would share their lives. And yeah, you get the idea. So yeah, so basically, MySpace has invented with only 1 million users. Well, not only because that's already like a lot, but then again, 10 years later, social media became popular, and different social media platforms have been discovered, like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And it's really interesting because 10 years later, uh, Facebook gained users. Over 200 billion accounts has been made, and I think it's crazy how social media has become a powerful tool for us. And as for the charts here, I wanted to show how the social media evolved and in years. So as you can see here in 2014, just like I said a while ago, that MySpace only has 1 million users started. But now, as you can see in 2019, we actually have over 2 billion users, and it's crazy because not just Facebook, but we only have but we do have other platforms like YouTube, WhatsApp, WeChat, Instagram, and it's really crazy because we actually gain interest in other things in social media, not just um, sharing our thoughts and sharing our lives, but We also evolve in our interest in photography, which is using the Instagram, or like being artistic and sharing our arts, which is, I guess, Tumblr. And especially now, like TikTok, a lot of people would just dance and they would get like 1 million views out of that. So it's really interesting. and and I also wanted to talk about the number of people using social media platforms, because not just the Generation Z and the millennials, but other demographics would actually use social media as well. And as you can see, at 2018, Facebook has over 2 billion users. And and of course, next, the YouTube and the WeChat and the Instagram. And next is, of course, the age group. As you can see here, 18 to 24, 18 to 29 years old, I mean, uh, has a lot going on here. As you can see, it's almost like 93% of this age group is using social media. And I think it's really interesting because uh, they would actually use their phones all the time, not knowing that they would actually have other priorities. And I'm actually guilty about this because I feel like everything this demographic knows that social media has everything already. So basically, they could just like go to a single click, or scroll through the digital media of the apps, and yeah, it's there. You don't have to like go anywhere. It's all on your phone. And of course, back in 2008, I think all the devices are so big. So basically, we would actually search our social media platforms through our laptops and computers. And I don't think that's really portable, I believe. But then again, as the years goes by, the devices are getting smaller and slimmer. Kind of like the latest iPhone or the MacBook Pro. How the devices are so slim now, and they actually promote portability. And I think it's really important uh, that this charts has been getting bigger for the yellow one, which is the mobile, because our devices just keep getting excelling, and we could just use it for everything now. So I actually like that. So yeah, so I'm actually gonna jump through the shopping tool because I think it's really important that the social media has this option now. And I kind of wanted to tackle up my topic to this pumpkin pie, the seasonal pumpkin pie. Well, according to Jerry Usim, that that I that I got the article from the Annals Edition book. The article is specifically called "How Online Shopping Makes Suckers of Us," because it's interesting that he actually made uh, an a social experiment on where to find this certain seasonal pumpkin pie. Well, if we actually find this in out of the season, for example, if we find this during spring or summer, of course you wouldn't really gonna be able to find this because pumpkin pie is known in the fall, obviously. But then again, in just the power of a click, we could just find the ingredients of it. For example, like the pumpkin, we could just actually find it, or just the vanilla extract or some other ingredients to it. You could just find it online. And that's actually the convenience of the shopping tool, which I want to jump through it to the Amazon. Um, so basically, Amazon right now is, obviously, we all knew Amazon. We all knew Jeff Bezos because he's considered one of the most richest company owners now, and he actually have uh, 201 201 billion net worth right now. Can you imagine that? He's kind of like one of the richest, and a lot of people would consider him, a god in the business world because I feel like he has everything. So yeah, so in mid March of 2015, um, Amazon has a listing of 59 listing for economists on its job site, and it's really interesting how Amazon would promote their products, and they would actually hire people who can actually innovate their warehouse even more, their brand, and and the website dedicated to recruit them. So they're actually really focused on getting their company big. And and if you didn't know about this, I kind of wanted to talk about the logo on Amazon because as you can see, there's an arrow over here from A to Z, and this logo means that Amazon has everything from A to Z. And it's really interesting how not just their company itself, but their logo is kind of like innovative enough because they would actually promote their company, that they have everything. And it's interesting that I think Amazon has a big impact now in our generation because I kind of wanted to jump on the Amazon versus Sears because um, I believe that Sears has the downfall nowadays. Uh, and I actually read this article about about Sears not being innovative enough, and I think that's interesting because Sears is one of the department stores that has been discovered and founded in the 1800s, and now that in our generation right now, in 2021, Sears has been continually closing their stores, and that's just really sad. And and according to the article that I read about this company is that Sears hasn't been innovative because they just stick with their comfort zone or their retail place. While Amazon, they've been innovative by just sticking with that e-commerce uh, location because Amazon thinks that this is actually most likely to be big, especially with the age group of 18 to 24 because we're always in our phone. Phone is our convenience, and that's why they actually built the option of having the Amazon Prime membership that's guaranteed of delivery of 1 to 2 days. And that's really interesting because it has been proven that Amazon has the innovative because as for me, of course, because as for me, I would really prefer to shop in Amazon because they have everything rather than Sears, and and Amazon offers all varieties too. That's why I really love this because Sears doesn't have good varieties. Just like they said, for example, if you have if you are finding a specific product, for example, like a bicycle, um, I think Sears only has like a limited amount of brands, but I'm sorry, but Amazon has a big chunks of brands to choose from. So that's interesting. And the third one, Sears didn't really focus on expanding their location because they only spend 91 cents per square meter, but comparing to the other competitors like Walmart, Target, and Best Buy, they would actually spend like $4 to $15 per square foot, and I think it's a big difference to have a big location when it comes to department store because you wanted to have a big a big chunk of selection, just like I said a while ago, and and Amazon, of course, being the top of everything. They actually built a delivery empire in Utah for $200 million. So just imagine that. And there's no doubt that they have everything from A to Z because they kind of like focus on this aspect of the business. So, and of course, we all knew that the convenience of the online shopping is everything, because it's already there, it's just one click. But then again, I kind of wanted to compare the online version versus the offline version. So this Farfetch, this is a global online marketplace for independent luxury boutiques. So basically, this is kind of like a Macy's department store, or Sears, as I open it up. But Farfetch is kind of like a department store for luxury brand like Gucci, Dior, or Hermes, kind of like that. So yeah, so according to the article that I read on the Annals Edition book again, from Elizabeth Patton, that Farfetch actually open a design museum to just see to for the people to see some creations made by the luxury designers. And I think it's interesting that they actually do this for this particular retail store, because I think couture products are so different than just any kind of clothing in the normal department store. As you can see here, I actually have an example of an image. This is an example of couture, which means the design and the design and the manufacture of the fashionable clothes to a client's specific requirements and measurements. So basically, this kind of couture outfits, it doesn't really have a specific oh no, I'm sorry. But they do have a specific sizing and measurement of this kind of clothing, and they do not generalize the size. So just imagine the intricacy and the detail of the work of these couture clothes that the luxury designers are making. And yeah, more examples of the couture clothing. As you can see here, look at the details that the designers put in the clothing garment. Like, can you just touch that? Like, like I would actually be interested in touching this in person because of how intricate and detailed oriented the designer did on this design. And jumping onto that, the Farfetch actually believe that I think offline shopping is really important because of the human connection towards the garment that we could actually to this garment. and and as you can see here, 80% of the time consumers wants to interact with the product they want to consume. And I think that's actually true for me as well, because if I were to buy clothes, I wanted to just feel it in person and touch it in person, and of course, I know that uh, online could be a convenience for us, because literally we could just go to our phones and just buy the certain product. But then again, we would always hesitate if we're gonna buy a product that we wanted to own, because we wanted to make sure if it's worth it. And that's why we actually have this option of buying something. And for the luxury world, I think it's interesting that they actually prefer the offline version of the shopping, because it says here, it is an extensive and rich assortment of options, and it has a human connection, which means shopping can be an intimate moment. And I do love that, because especially for clothing, because you wanted to see the detail and the quality of it, just to make sure that it's not uh, you got your money worth on the product. So the first question is, do you prefer online or offline shopping, and why? Just think about that. Well, personally for me, I'm kind of like in the middle of everything. Just like I said, uh, I prefer the online because of the convenience, but I prefer the online shopping because I wanted to see the details of the work that I wanted to consume. So yeah. So yeah, so now that we talk about the offline, I mean the comparison of the online and offline shopping, and then we talk about the quality clothing that Farfetch have, and because of that, I wanted to talk about the fast fashion as well. And I think it's interesting because fast fashion right now is it's literally fast because you can just go through online and it's interesting because they're just super duper cheap. And one example of that is the Sheen. I don't know how to pronounce this, if it's like Sheen or Shine, but I guess it's Sheen. So basically, Sheen is the e-commerce clothing retail company that offers affordable and fashionable garments from China, and they actually have a headquarters in the China called Shenzhen Global E-commerce. And I think it's interesting that they actually make their product really cheap because of how their process is, and they actually do offshoring, means the practice of going overseas for taking advantage of cost services, and they do actually do their offshore job through Bangladesh. And of course, for fast fashion, it's basically means imitating and replicating designs from the luxury brand. So yeah, so this is actually questionable because if you didn't know, Shein is actually super duper cheap, and a lot of people would actually ask the company itself, why is it cheap, And as you can see here, this is an example of a tweet, and there's actually an alleged issue about the Shein selling this swastika necklace, because I think it's interesting that they actually made this, and obviously, uh, if someone wear this, that person would be identified as a Nazi, and we don't want that, because this actually is a serious offense, and Sheen actually has this problem of producing this. Well, after that, they apologized to it, but then again, they kind of like continue doing this by producing this carpet religious prayer mats, and I think it's kind of like offensive to other cultures as well, because they actually use this prayer mats as a religious practice, but then again, Sheen just using this for whims, just for decorating your house. And yeah, and another example is this artist that I came upon through on my Instagram. So this is actually his original work, but Sheen actually reproduce this design without this artist uh, yeah, without this artist's permission, and that's practically stealing, so yeah, and Sheen actually promotes child laboring because they're offshoring in Bangladesh. Of course, their product is so much cheaper, of course, but then again, they actually using child because they believe that child has a delicate touch to a product that will maintain the quality of it. And it's interesting because this makes me sad actually, because between the ages of 5 to 17, uh, the age group of 5 to 17, they would actually hire these children for an estimate of 168 million children. Like I couldn't imagine hiring a child, especially if my child is being hired for this kind of company. It's horrible because they would actually just be paid for approximately like $30 a month. Can you imagine that? And they would actually hire 80% of the workers for 12 hours a day without a break, and it's horrible. And they would actually um, work in this sweatshops, which is similar to this image. So sweatshop is actually a factory of or workshop, especially in the clothing industry, where manual workers are employed at the very low. wages for long hours and under poor conditions. And yeah, and I sympathize with these guys because I don't think this is tolerable, and I wouldn't really encourage this. So yeah, so but to prevent this, fast fashion, um, the solution is to go on a sustainable fashion, because I believe that sustainability would actually help um, save our save our planet, obviously. So ways to be sustainable and be ethical is to be clean and green, and and sustainable fashion should promote Fair Trade Act, which means uh, that manufactured goods needs to be produced in a clean, healthy working environment that earns a fair wage, and not just overworking your employees, but they treat it as fair. And and another ways to be sustainable is to go what the millennials said, thrifting, which means just buying secondhand clothing in stores like Goodwill or just your local thrift shops, and and of course to reuse and edit clothes. And I think it's interesting because uh, the fashion industry has been so influenced by the social media, especially for being sustainable, because they actually encourage to save the world. And obviously they're influencers, so they wanted to have the good image in the social media world, so they would actually promote sometimes, like, wearing vintage, because wearing vintage is actually from uh, wearing secondhand clothing. And I just really love that, because these kind of influencers are kind of like the new marketers in the jobs now. And I think that's kind of like the new jobs on the social media that has been uh, built in our generation right now. And yeah. And for my question number two, do you think that social media should be a requirement in terms of identification and qualification of the job? Because right now, everyone has a social media, especially for those fashion enthusiasts. They would actually share their interests through fashion. But then again, do you think this is a requirement to have uh, a brand on social media? So. So yeah, so for the conclusion, I believe that social media is a powerful and innovative tool, especially nowadays, because social media is everything, obviously. And I learned that online is convenience and offline is experience. So self-explanatory. And be sustainable as much as possible, just to save the planet. And of course, research before consuming, because as you can see, as I explained a while ago, Sheen has a lot of problems with that company. So make sure to do your research, and of course be fashionably reasonable in facts. Check your facts, make sure that it's correct, and it's not false. So to conclude my presentation, thank you so much for listening, and that is all.